thank you for that warm introduction. It's a great delight to be here in Berlin at the ESMT, and I thank the organizers for this opportunity to share a few thoughts. I'm today representing the UNSG's high-level panel on behalf of the co-chairs, Jack Ma and Melinda Gates. I've also been asked to speak in my previous capacity as chair of the negotiations in Geneva for the past 2 years on emerging technologies in the area of lethal autonomous weapon systems. I will also draw on my training as an engineer, my work on technology, arms control, and international security in the past 2.5 decades, and recent exciting engagements that the panel has had in China, in the Silicon Valley, in Europe, with CEOs, technologists, investors and startups, government officials, and civil society. Digital technologies have allowed strangers to trust each other at a massive scale, from Wikipedia to ride-sharing to online purchases to sharing of accommodations. Conversely, trust has been undermined by the use of digital tools by states and their proxies for cyber attacks, cyber espionage, and political hacking, by cyber crimes, and the loss of personal data by corporations and governments. It is no surprise, therefore, that the UN Secretary General opened this year's UN General Assembly by noting that the world is suffering from a trust deficit disorder. This trust deficit is both horizontal across borders and vertical across companies and consumers, governments and citizens. And if trust appears to be a theoretical notion to some of you, just imagine if traders at a stock exchange could no longer trust the information they see on their screens, and if deep fakes ended up on mainstream media and you could not tell the difference between what is real and what is augmented reality. Digital trust and security is one of the 5 priority action areas identified by the panel. While we are not likely to go deep into issues related to the militarization of cyberspace and the potential use of intelligent autonomous technologies in warfare, some of our work on values and principles that should underpin the digital age and on methods and mechanisms to enhance digital cooperation might be of value to relevant forums, especially as 3 processes move forward next year, which is the 30th anniversary of the World Wide Web. And these 3 processes are the group of governmental experts and the open-ended working group on information security pursuant to resolutions moved by the Russian Federation and the United States, both voted. And the 3rd process is the CCW group of governmental experts on lethal autonomous weapons. Allow me now to address this latter process. In recent years, technology fields have started to merge and create new use scenarios both in the civil and military domains. A case in point is the formerly esoteric field of artificial intelligence. Increased availability of computing power, the massive data generated by internet-connected devices, and falling costs for data storage and manipulation have brought AI out of obscure conferences into newspaper headlines and speeches of leaders. Techniques such as machine learning, combined with the availability of large data sets and computing power to train AI algorithms, have led to machines taking on tasks that earlier seemed reserved for the human brain. To this audience, I don't have to cite examples, but the defeat of the 18-time world champion in Go, Lee Sedol, by DeepMind's AI algorithm in March 2016, is a powerful symbol of this shift in the balance of power between man and machine. It was only natural that these advances in intelligent autonomy would attract attention and concern at the possible deployment and use of lethal autonomous weapons. What was needed was a forum to discuss these concerns and begin to construct common understandings on possible responses. During the Cold War, conventional weapons-related arms control tended to play second fiddle to strategic weaponry. This gap persisted even though technology and security trends began to shift in the late 1990s. The multilateral system for dealing with advanced conventional weaponry outside of ad hoc export control regimes such as the Wassenaar Arrangement remained relatively underdeveloped. Fortunately, one instrument at the juncture of international humanitarian law and arms control stands out. This is the Convention on Prohibitions or Restrictions on the Use of Certain Conventional Weapons, or the CCW. This convention, negotiated under UN auspices in 1980, has its roots in key IHL principles such as proportionality and distinction between civilians and combatants. Currently, the convention has 5 protocols. Thus, it has a modular design that allows new instruments to be attached to the framework treaty as humanitarian concerns around weapon systems evolve and as new systems emerge. While discussions on lethal autonomy began in human rights forums in Geneva and helped raise awareness, the CCW turned out to be the forum of choice to discuss this issue. The reasons were, 1, its flexible nature, and the balance it upholds between humanitarian principles and military necessity. And this is important because it provided space for states with very different views to begin engaging on a complex and rapidly evolving technology. Second, the convention has all the countries with established or emerging capabilities in AI systems. Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Israel, Japan, Republic of Korea, Russia, UK, US are all high contracting parties to the convention. This is not to say that the forum was without any challenges. An important and continuing challenge is financial stability, and last month it almost led to a failure to renew the mandate for the group for the required number of days. Another challenge is how to involve industry and technology developers in discussion on lethal autonomy, given, among others, the industry fear of being stigmatized. A significant challenge, in my view, was mindsets. The tendency of the traditional arms control community to see weapons in discrete, countable terms, of the international humanitarian law community to see civilian and military objects in binary terms, and of some states and civil society to see the AI tech industry as akin to a state-sponsored military-industrial complex, when the reality is that most of the intellectual property and most of the cutting-edge human resource sits largely in the private sector. And Hollywood depictions of Iron Man and Terminator did not help either. A lot of focus, therefore, in the first year of our work was on raising awareness of the technology, sifting through the hype and the dystopian fantasies, teasing out the cross-domain connections, and bringing together legal, ethical, military, technical, and entrepreneurial perspectives. The ethical perspective was particularly useful in engaging the human rights and faith-based communities. Side events held by NGOs, research institutions, and states enrich the discussions with new perspectives, including from young AI entrepreneurs from around the world. At the end of the year, the group adopted a set of conclusions and recommendations by consensus, one of which was that the CCW is the appropriate framework for dealing with the issue, and the other, importantly, that IHL applies fully to the potential development and use of lethal autonomous weapon systems. This was an important early assurance, although it did not settle the question of whether further legal norms were needed. The consensus conclusions also allowed me as chair to focus the agenda of the group for 2018 on 1, characterization of the systems under consideration, or the so-called definitional issue. What is it that we're dealing with? Second, aspects of the human-machine interaction critical to the concern about potential violations of IHL. And I recall that someone mentioned the EDGES system in the morning and the experience that military users have had with human-machine interface in automated systems. And the third was possible options for addressing the humanitarian and international security consequences of such systems. This is the political question that's the most important to some in the CCW community. There were, of course, divergent views on definitions, risks, as well as possible benefits of lethal autonomous weapon systems, and approaches to regulation and control, including the idea of a preemptive ban. But the chair's summary, which we attach to these conclusions and recommendations, emerged as a practical device to capture the diversity of views without blocking progress on substance, and also to socialize interagency experts in headquarters on the fast evolving issue. The GG stepped up its work in 2018 with 2 sessions in April and in August. At its first meeting, it made significant progress in reaching common understandings on the quality and depth of the human-machine interface required not only for ensuring respect with IHL, but also for eventually constructing more ambitious outcomes on human responsibility and accountability. The group used a so-called sunrise slide to examine the different phases of technology development, deployment, and use, and thus develop appreciation of the work that would be required in each of those slices to ensure meaningful human oversight and control. With regard to definitions or the characterization issue, the discussions enhanced common ground on the concepts required for an eventual definition and shifted minds away from the elusive silver bullet of a technical bright line between what is autonomous and what is automated and therefore can be handled under legacy instruments. Most significantly, the work on common understandings and principles started in 2017 was continued in April and culminated in a set of possible guiding principles at the end of the August sessions. These principles, 10 commandments, if you will, are supported by a set of building blocks on characterization, on the human-machine interface, and on technology review. The last is very important given the fast-paced developments in technology and the need for the policy curve to be aligned with the technology development curve. The report of the GG also presents 4 options for policy, including a possible legally binding instrument and also a political declaration with elements of transparency, an option championed by Germany and France, among others. And the point to note is that any one of these options, these political options, can be supported by the agreed guiding principles and the building blocks on characterization and the human-machine interface. Just a word on these 10 principles. There is a lot of work going on principles in the AI space and digital technologies in general. One of my colleagues has counted more than 100 initiatives on principles. But this is the first instance of governments in an intergovernmental forum agreeing to such principles. And these include the applicability of IHL, the non-delegation of human responsibility to machines, accountability for the use of force in accordance with international law, weapons review before deployment, incorporation of physical non-proliferation and cybersecurity safeguards, risk assessment and mitigation during technology development, non-harm to civilian R&D and use, and need to adopt a non-anthropomorphic perspective on AI, so no Iron Man, and the appropriateness of the CCW as a framework for dealing with the issue. The understandings on human-machine interface are built around the following touch points. I mentioned the sunrise slide, political direction, the pre-development phase, then the research and development phase, the testing, evaluation, and certification phase, deployment, training, command and control, use and abort, and post-use assessment. And the group agreed that the notion of human accountability threads together all these different slices, all these different human-machine touch points in the context of the convention. We also agreed on the need to move in step with technology and build in partnership with industry and other stakeholders a common scientific and policy vernacular across the globe. No doubt, ladies and gentlemen, further work is required to foreclose possible harm to civilians and combatants in armed conflict in contravention of IHL obligations, exacerbation of security dilemmas through arms races, and the lowering of the threshold for the use of force. However, the August 2018 outcome is a plus for the multilateral ethic at a challenging time for global cooperation. It underlines the important role that UN forums can play in addressing the challenges posed by rapidly developing technologies by involving all important stakeholders and by leveraging the existing foundations of international law and institution. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.